I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. You can't understand why they call me Shorty when I'm not that short. The problem you have is making the assumption that my name refers to my height. You know, height is not the only way a fella can come up short. So why then do they call me Shorty? I grew up in a very small town where getting a nickname was a big deal. I never understood why, but it was sort of a rite of passage for boys. Of course, a few of the girls had nicknames, but that's an entirely different kind of story. I had friends who had names like Sour Gut, Buckethead, Muscles, Chigger, Bimbo, Froggy. One kid whose last name was Hands was called Soapy. My brother was called Satchel Butt. My father, who became my father while he was still in high school, was called Bottle. He carried his school lunch in a diaper bag. I was fortunate to get out of there with a nickname as unremarkable as Shorty. When I was a kid, I had a lot of differences, and you know, the boys, particularly when they're in middle school and in the elementary school, they're very good at ferreting out your differences and giving them a name. And I had my differences. I not only was short, I was small. I was that kid that was always picked last when they chose up sides on the playground. I was fair game for a very colorful nickname. I'm going to give you an example so you can see what I mean. Imagine this. There's a small boy standing beside the road in front of his house waiting on the school bus. He is impeccably dressed. He is wearing short pants, a freshly ironed shirt, and polished sandals.
Okay.
His hair is combed and lacquered in place. On a school bus filled with denim overalls, feed sack dresses, and brogan shoes, he will be little Lord Fauntleroy. The boy's name is Arvin. Not James or Robert or David or William or Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. It's Arvin. He was named by his paternal grandmother, who was the matriarch of the family when he was born. She was a widow, a staunch church member, and a gospel music groupie. She loved gospel music and gospel music singers. And there was this one singer, a tenor, who was hitting all the right notes. And unfortunately for the boy, his name was Arvin. Now, riding on a school bus, jam full of rowdy kids of all ages, some of whom have been on the bus since early morning, can be risky for a small boy. But if his name is Arvin, and he is impeccably dressed. It is downright dangerous. When Arvin stepped up on the bus, a very large farm lad sitting on the front seat picked him up and quite easily tossed him over his shoulder to a boy in the second row, while shouting, "Here comes little Arvin."
Oh,
The
no.
boy in the second row repeated that maneuver and that shout to a boy in the third row, and then to a boy in the fourth and the fifth, and so on, until little Arvin was plopped into a seat in the back of the bus. Everybody loved it, including the bus driver. That is, everybody but, of course, little Arvin. I have often wondered how different my life would have been if that gospel singer's name had been Elvis. Arvin is not a bad name, it's just unusual. When the boy would tell someone his name was Arvin, they would look at him like they didn't know for sure they heard what he said. It's sort of like people do now when I tell them my name is Shorty. I have considered changing my nickname to something more appropriate for my age and stature. I've actually been encouraged to do so. The first time by a neighbor boy. He was an older kid. He was an elementary school dropout. And he was in and out of juvenile detention the entire time I knew him. But he became my friend and mentor. He confided in me one day that when he got into serious trouble, which was frequently, he found it to his advantage to have an alias. And he suggested that an alias or two would help me with my name problem. And I have over the years used different aliases, depending on what I was doing at the time, my job, whatever, the role I was playing. But I always return to my nickname. I always come back to Shorty, and here's why. It is the same reason that Adam gave for eating that apple. There's a woman involved. When I was in school, I met this girl. And over time, I came to like her quite a bit. And one of the reasons I did was because she liked my nickname. That was almost 70 years ago.
Wow.
And as long as she likes it, that will be my name. When I was thinking about the prompt for tonight's story, my wife, who happens to be the girl who likes my nickname, had me listen to Peter, Paul, and Mary's song, or their version of the song, "Don't Call Me Names." You may be familiar with that song. She was a middle school counselor, and she worked a lot with bullies. And she always made them listen to this song, which I think resonates in this time of labeling and name calling. It's important what names we call each other. As you know, the words in the chorus of that song is, "Don't laugh at me, don't call me names. Don't get your pleasure from my pain, 'cause in God's name God's eyes, we are all the same. So call me Shorty, all my friends do.